It started on a rainy Tuesday. The kind that makes the office windows fog up and everyone a little quieter than usual. Claire sat at her desk, tapping her pen against a half-empty coffee cup. She had stayed late 3 nights in a row finishing reports that no one seemed to notice. Except one person, Ethan. Ethan was new. Confident but not arrogant. He worked in marketing, just across the hall. Whenever Claire walked by, he'd give that easy grin of his, the kind that made her forget her next sentence. That day, their manager called out sick, leaving Claire and Ethan in charge of preparing the client proposal. The deadline was next morning. Everyone else had gone home. The rain outside had turned heavier, echoing softly through the empty floor. "Looks like it's just you and me tonight," Ethan said, walking over with his laptop. Claire smiled. "Guess we're the lucky ones." They laughed quietly, and the tension melted a little. The office felt different. Not cold or sterile anymore, but warm. Almost intimate, though neither said a word about it. They ordered pizza, spread the files across the conference table, and started working. At first, it was all business. Graphs, taglines, budgets. But as the hours passed, the conversations drifted. He asked about her favorite movies. She asked where he grew up. They shared stories about college, awkward first jobs, the people they used to be. Claire hadn't realized how much she missed talking like that. Simple, honest conversations with someone who actually listened. By 9:45 p.m., the office was quiet except for the hum of computers. The lights flickered slightly. She looked up from her notes to find Ethan watching her. Not in a way that made her uncomfortable, more like he was trying to read her thoughts. "What?" she asked softly. He smiled. "Nothing, just... You look really focused." Claire looked down, feeling her cheeks warm. She wasn't used to compliments, especially not ones that felt genuine. The rain kept falling harder now. Thunder rolled somewhere in the distance. They worked side by side, their shoulders almost touching. Every so often their eyes met and lingered. At one point, the power blinked off for half a second, just enough to make them both laugh nervously. "Guess the building doesn't like late workers," Ethan joked. "Neither does my body," Claire replied, stretching her arms. "I might turn into a zombie soon," he chuckled. "Then I'll make sure you get home safe, zombie or not." The line was light, playful, but it stayed with her longer than it should have. She tried to focus again on the spreadsheet, but her mind kept drifting to that simple promise. By the time they finished, it was past midnight. The city outside was soaked and quiet. Ethan stood, closing his laptop. "We make a good team," he said. Claire nodded. "Yeah, we do." They walked to the elevator together. The sound of their footsteps echoed in the empty hallway. When the doors opened, she turned toward him and said, "Thanks for staying late. I couldn't have done it alone." He hesitated before replying. "Anytime, Claire. Really." For a second, neither of them moved. It was one of those moments that feel like they could turn into something more, if only someone said the right thing. But the elevator dinged again, breaking the spell. She smiled, stepping inside. "Good night, Ethan," he smiled back. "Good night." As the doors closed, Claire exhaled, realizing her heart was beating faster than it should. Walking to her car, she couldn't help but wonder, was there something there? Or was it just the rain, the late hour, the quiet of an empty office playing tricks on her heart? She didn't know it then, but that night was just the beginning of something she would never forget. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. That night, as she drove home through the rain, Claire replayed his words in her mind. "We make a good team," she smiled to herself, unaware of how soon that simple line would mean something entirely different. The next morning, the office felt brighter, but Claire couldn't shake the memory of last night. Every detail lingered in her mind, the glow of the desk lamps, the soft sound of rain, the way Ethan had looked at her when she wasn't speaking. She told herself it was nothing. Just 2 coworkers working late. Still, when she saw him walk in with his usual calm stride and coffee in hand, her heart reacted before her mind could stop it. "Morning," he said, flashing that easy grin again. "Morning," she replied, trying to sound casual. Their eyes met for half a second too long. She turned back to her computer, pretending to read an email that wasn't even open. Throughout the day, she found herself noticing things she hadn't before. How he leaned forward when listening to someone. How he always helped the interns without being asked. How his laughter had this low, warm tone that made people around him smile. By noon, they crossed paths near the break room. He held the door open, coffee in one hand. "You recovered from last night's work marathon?" She laughed softly. "Barely. I think I'm running on caffeine and sheer willpower," he smiled. "Then I'll owe you another pizza next time." Claire froze for a moment, the word next echoing in her head. Later that afternoon, their manager, Lisa, called a meeting. The big presentation they'd prepared together had impressed the client. Lisa praised their teamwork and hinted that they might handle more projects together. Ethan caught Claire's eye across the table. Just a subtle, knowing look. She tried not to smile, but failed. After the meeting, he leaned against her desk. "Guess we're partners in crime now." "Seems that way," she said, keeping her tone light though her pulse raced. That week, they worked together almost every day. Lunch meetings turned into shared coffee breaks. Brainstorming sessions stretched longer than necessary, filled with laughter and quiet glances that said more than words. Still, nothing was said out loud. Claire wasn't sure if she even wanted it to be. She liked the comfort of the in-between, that unspoken connection where every look carried a secret meaning. But then came Friday evening. Most people had already left when Ethan walked by her cubicle. "Hey," he said, resting his hand on the divider. "You got a minute?" "Sure, I might have told Lisa we could polish the slides for next week's pitch." "She wants them Monday morning." Claire raised an eyebrow. "You mean we're staying late again?" He grinned sheepishly. "I'll order dinner this time before you faint on me." She rolled her eyes but smiled. "Fine, but I'm picking the toppings." By 7:30, the office had emptied again. It felt familiar now. The two of them in the soft glow of desk lamps. The quiet hum of the building. Ethan turned on some music, low and easy. Something instrumental that filled the silence without taking over. They worked. Laughed and talked, though work became a loose word. Somewhere between adjusting slides and sharing stories about childhood summers, the air shifted again. At one point, he handed her a printed sheet. Their fingers brushed lightly. It was such a small touch, but it sent a spark through her chest. She looked up. He was already looking at her. For a moment, time felt suspended, like the city outside had stopped moving. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The silence between them said enough. Then Claire cleared her throat softly. "You, missed a typo here," she said, pointing to the page. He smiled, eyes still steady on hers. Right, the typo. The tension broke, but something had changed. They both knew it. By 10 p.m., they finally called it a night. Ethan offered to walk her out again, and she didn't argue. As they reached the elevator, Claire hesitated. "You don't have to keep doing that," she said quietly. "Doing what?" "Walking me out. Staying late. Making sure I'm okay." Ethan looked at her for a long second. "Maybe I just want to." Claire felt her breath catch. The elevator doors opened, and he stepped aside for her to enter first. She did, but her thoughts stayed behind, spinning around that one line. Maybe I just want to. She didn't know what to make of it. But something inside her whispered that this, whatever it was, wasn't just coincidence anymore. And as she drove home under a clear sky this time, she couldn't stop smiling. Yet deep down, she knew that feelings like these never stayed simple for long. The following week, Claire tried to convince herself that things hadn't changed, that she and Ethan were still just colleagues who happened to get along well, that the easy laughter, the stolen glances, and those long, lingering silences didn't mean anything more, but denial only works for so long. They started texting after work, first about deadlines and projects, then about music, life, and little things that didn't belong in the office. By Thursday night, she realized their messages stretched past midnight. He made her laugh when her days were hard. He remembered things about her that even old friends forgot. And somewhere along the way, she started looking forward to Mondays again. One morning, as she arrived early, Ethan was already there. He handed her a cup of coffee just the way she liked it. 2 sugars, no cream. "How'd you know?" she asked, surprised. He smiled. "I pay attention." It was such a simple line, yet it stayed with her all day. Later, during a team meeting, Lisa asked Claire and Ethan to present their ideas together for an upcoming campaign. They stood side by side at the front of the room, and as Claire spoke, Ethan subtly adjusted her slides without her even asking. It was seamless, like they'd been doing this for years. Afterward, Lisa laughed. "You two read each other's minds. Keep that up and I might have to pair you permanently." Claire felt her cheeks warm. Ethan just smiled, but his glance lingered a second longer than necessary. Over the next few days, their partnership deepened, not just professionally. There were small things. The way he leaned close when explaining something. The way she'd find his handwriting on her sticky notes. Teasing her to take a lunch break. But what really caught her off guard was how he seemed to notice her moods. When she got bad news from her sister one afternoon, Ethan didn't ask questions. He just quietly placed a wrapped chocolate bar on her desk. "Emergency supplies," he said with a soft grin. That night, when she was locking up, he caught up to her in the parking lot. "You okay?" he asked gently. Claire nodded, though her voice wavered. "Yeah, just family stuff. Nothing big," he hesitated, then said quietly, "If you ever need to talk, I'm here. No pressure." Something in his tone, the calm sincerity, nearly broke her. They stood there for a long moment, the parking lot lights glowing pale gold over them. She wanted to say something, anything, but couldn't find the words. Instead, she just said, "Thank you." He smiled. "Any time." That weekend, she couldn't stop thinking about him. It wasn't just attraction. It was something warmer, quieter, something that felt like it could grow if she let it. But she also knew how dangerous that could be. Office rumors spread fast, and she'd worked too hard to be taken seriously. Still, on Monday, when she saw him walking toward her desk with that same easy confidence, her heart gave up on pretending. "Morning." "Partner," he said with a grin. "Morning," she replied, trying to hide her smile. By midweek, their chemistry was impossible to ignore. Even Lisa teased them lightly during lunch, though nothing about their behavior was inappropriate. Still, Claire began to worry. What if others started talking? She decided to put some distance between them. She told herself it was the smart thing to do, so the next day she avoided him. Ate lunch at her desk. Kept her replies short. Ethan noticed immediately. That evening, as everyone was leaving, he stopped by her cubicle. "Did I do something?" he asked quietly. She looked up from her screen. "No, not at all, just busy." He studied her for a moment like he didn't believe her. "You've barely looked at me all day," Claire sighed. "Ethan, I just think maybe we've been spending a lot of time together lately." He frowned. "Is that a bad thing?" "No," she said quickly. "It's just, people might start talking. You know how offices are." Ethan nodded slowly, but his voice softened. "I get it. But for what it's worth, I don't care what they say." She looked at him, caught off guard. He smiled faintly. "I like working with you, Claire. And I like talking to you. That's all." Before she could reply, someone called his name from across the hall. And the moment broke. When she finally left that night, she sat in her car for a long time, staring at the rain-speckled windshield. She knew she had crossed into something that couldn't be easily undone, and deep down, she feared she was already too far in to turn back. The next few days felt strange. Claire and Ethan still worked together, but there was an invisible wall between them now, one that neither wanted, but both respected. They still laughed during meetings, still exchanged ideas easily. But gone were the lingering glances, the quiet after-hours talks, the small gestures that once made the long workdays feel lighter. Claire told herself this was for the best. Yet every time she caught his voice from across the office, her heart betrayed her. Then came Friday afternoon. Lisa called an emergency team meeting. The client had requested major changes to the campaign. It meant long hours, maybe the whole weekend. Everyone groaned, but Claire stayed quiet. When the meeting ended, Ethan waited until most people left before walking over. "So, guess we're back to being the last ones here again," he said softly. Claire met his eyes. For a moment, it felt like the wall between them cracked. "Yeah," she said quietly, "just like old times." They stayed late that evening, side by side again in the quiet office. The tension between them had softened into something tender, something that felt like understanding. At one point, Ethan leaned back in his chair, sighing. "You ever get tired of always doing the right thing?" Claire looked at him, unsure what to say. "You mean being responsible?" He nodded. "Yeah, always worrying what people think. Always stopping yourself before you cross some invisible line." She hesitated. "I think we all do that sometimes." He turned toward her, his voice lower now. "But you do it more than most?" Her heart caught, then she started, but he didn't let her finish. "I'm not saying anything you don't already know," he said gently. "You hold yourself back, even when something feels right." His words lingered in the space between them like static. She looked away, trying to steady her breath. "Maybe because I've learned the hard way what happens when I don't." Ethan leaned forward, his tone soft. "I'm not asking for anything you don't want. I just don't want to keep pretending this connection isn't there." The honesty in his voice left her speechless. She stared at him, torn between what she felt and what she knew she should do. Every instinct told her to keep things professional, to protect herself, her job, her peace. But then she looked into his eyes and saw none of the usual office games or empty charm she'd grown used to. "Just something real, Ethan," she whispered, her voice almost trembling. "This can't!" Before she could finish, the power flickered again, the same way it had that first night. They both laughed, the tension breaking for a moment. "Guess the building's reminding us how this started," he said softly. Claire smiled despite herself. "Yeah, seems like it." They got back to work, though their focus wavered. When the project was finally done, it was past midnight again. They packed up in silence, walking together to the elevator like before. As they waited for the doors to open, Ethan said quietly, "You know, I wasn't kidding about what I said earlier." Claire looked at him, heart pounding. "I know," the elevator chimed. She stepped inside, but this time he didn't stay behind. He walked in with her. The ride down was quiet, just the low hum of machinery and the sound of rain outside. When the doors opened at the lobby, Claire turned to him. "Ethan, I can't let this affect our work. I need to be sure we're on the same page." He nodded. "We are. I'd never do anything to make things harder for you." She believed him, and that scared her even more. They stepped outside under the awning. The rain had slowed, falling in thin silver streaks across the streetlights. For a long moment, they just stood there, two people caught between right and real. Finally, Ethan said softly, "Whatever this is, Claire, it doesn't have to be complicated. We can take it slow." She looked at him, searching for words, but all she managed was a quiet, "I don't know if I can." He smiled sadly. "Then I'll wait." Her breath caught. "Ethan," but he just nodded, stepping back toward the parking lot. "Good night, Claire." She watched him go, her chest tight with something that felt too much like longing. That night, lying in bed, she replayed everything in her mind, his voice, his words, the way the rain had softened around them, and she realized she wasn't afraid of what others might think anymore. She was afraid of how deeply she already cared. The weekend came and went in a blur of thoughts Claire couldn't escape. She tried reading, cleaning, anything to quiet her mind. But no matter what she did, Ethan's words echoed in the back of her head. "I'll wait." By Monday morning, she knew something had changed, not just between them, inside her. When she walked into the office, Ethan was already there, setting up for the client presentation. He looked up the moment she entered, his usual calm expression softening just slightly. "Hey," he said quietly. "Hey," she replied. For a few seconds, they stood in silence. Then she smiled, small but genuine. "Ready to impress them?" He grinned. "With you on my team?" "Always." The meeting went flawlessly. Their ideas flowed together like they were reading from the same script. Even Lisa noticed. "You two make the perfect balance," she said afterward. "Keep this up, and the clients will be fighting to work with you." When the room cleared, Claire and Ethan stayed behind to pack up. "Guess we did it again," he said, stacking the folders. "Yeah," she replied softly. "We really did." Their hands brushed briefly as they reached for the same file. Both froze, but neither pulled away right away. For a moment, the room felt too still. The hum of the overhead lights, the faint sound of laughter from down the hall. Everything blurred into the background. Then Claire stepped back, her voice quiet. "Ethan, about what you said the other night." He looked up. "That I'd wait?" She nodded. "You don't have to." He frowned slightly. "I meant it." "I know," she said gently. "But I don't want you waiting for something uncertain. We work well together. I don't want to risk that." Ethan studied her face, as if trying to read what she wasn't saying. "So that's it?" Claire hesitated. "I think it has to be. For now?" There was no anger in his eyes, just quiet understanding, the kind that only comes from someone who truly cared. He nodded slowly. "Okay, for now." She exhaled, relieved and heartbroken at once. For the next few weeks, they slipped into a new rhythm. They still worked side by side, still shared quiet jokes, still read each other's thoughts in meetings. But something unspoken always hung in the air, like a song that had ended but never faded completely. One late evening, when most of the office had gone, Claire found a note on her desk. It wasn't signed, but she knew his handwriting. It read, "You make ordinary days feel like they matter." That's all I wanted to say. She sat there for a long time, staring at the paper. There was no confession, no pressure, just honesty, and it made her chest ache in the best possible way. A few days later, Ethan got offered a temporary project in another city. He told her during lunch, his tone calm but bittersweet. "Only 3 months," he said. "Lisa wants me to oversee the rollout." Claire smiled, though it felt forced. "That's great, Ethan, you deserve it." He nodded. "Yeah, I guess." They sat in silence for a while, neither knowing what to say. Finally, she said, "You'll do great." "You always do." He looked at her for a long second. "I'll miss working with you." Her throat tightened. "Me too." When his last day came, the team gathered to wish him luck. He shook hands, smiled, made small talk, but when he reached Claire, he paused. No words. Just a soft look that said everything they couldn't say aloud. And then he was gone. The office felt emptier after that. Quieter. But Claire kept the note tucked in her drawer, reading it sometimes when days felt long. 3 months later, just as spring began, she received an email, subject, "Guess who's back?" She opened it and smiled. No promises, no dramatic confessions. Just 2 words that carried all the warmth of what they'd shared, and the quiet possibility of what still might be. As she looked out the window, sunlight spilling over the city, Claire realized something. Some connections aren't defined by labels or timing. They're simply felt, quietly, deeply, and without needing to be explained. And that was enough.